July 19th, 1987. A baby boy is born in Rochester, New York. Nobody in that room knows it yet. But this kid is going to become the greatest MMA fighter who has ever lived. 16 title fights, all won. 1,743 days as champion. A 95% takedown defense rate that no fighter in this sport has ever matched. And here is the part that should stop you in your tracks. He is just number one on this list. Before we get there, a man walked across the Sahara Desert to reach this spot. A fighter who stood 5 feet 3 inches tall and broke records that nobody has touched since. A champion who held a belt for 2,457 consecutive days. These are not just fighters. These are warriors who came from nothing and conquered everything. This is the top 10 black MMA fighters of all time. So let's start with number 10, Kevin Holland. Most fighters go into the octagon quiet and locked in. Kevin Holland goes in talking to his opponents, mid-fight, while landing punches, while setting up submissions. Full conversations, and he is still winning. Holland is from Fort Worth, Texas. He turned professional in 2015 with no big team, no famous gym, and no spotlight. Just raw talent and the most unpredictable fighting style anyone had seen in years. He switches stances mid-combination. He throws strikes from angles that make coaches scratch their heads. He finishes fights from positions where most fighters are just trying to survive. And in 2020, he did something no UFC fighter had ever done before. 5 finishes in 1 calendar year. Knockouts and submissions across middleweight and welterweight both. A pace that even the sport's most dominant champions had never sustained in a single year. As of 2026, Holland still has not captured a UFC title, but at 32 years old, still active, still dangerous, still finishing the trailblazer, is the only fighter on this list whose story is still being written in real time. But now let's talk about the man who already finished his title quest. A man who stepped into a lineage of legends and carried it forward. Coming in at number 9, Jamahal Hill. Jamahal Hill grew up in Chicago. He came through kickboxing before jumping to MMA, and from round 1 of his very first UFC fight, it was obvious. This man carried something in his hands that could not be coached or manufactured. Crisp boxing, devastating timing, knockout power from either side. His nickname is Sweet Dreams because when Hill lands clean, the lights go out. The road to the title was not smooth. Injuries, setbacks, moments where everything got pushed back. But on January 21st, 2023, at UFC 283, Hill defeated Glover Teixeira by unanimous decision and became the UFC light heavyweight champion. He stepped into a lineage that includes Rashad Evans, Quinton Rampage Jackson, and the man who will be number 1 on this list. He carried that crown with pride. An injury forced him to vacate the belt later that year. But as of June 2026, Hill is still ranked among the top contenders. Still hunting. Sweet Dreams is not finished. Next, imagine someone who didn't just fight for a title, but first had to survive a desert crossing and imprisonment to even reach the sport. That remarkable journey comes now. At number 8, Francis Ngannou. Bati, Cameroon, no running water, no electricity, no path forward. So Ngannou made a decision most people would never dare to make. He walked across the Sahara Desert. He crossed into Morocco. He was imprisoned. He nearly did not make it. But he survived, reached Paris, found a gym, and in 2013 turned professional. By 2021, he was the UFC heavyweight champion of the world. Scientists measured his punch at a 129,161 units on a power cube machine. The hardest punch ever recorded in sports history. More powerful than a car at full speed. Alistair Overeem, Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos, and Stipe Miocic all knocked out, all finished. In 2023, he left the UFC for the PFL, fighting for control, respect, and fighter rights. He fought for every underpaid fighter who ever felt invisible inside a major promotion. His story is not just about knockouts. It is about survival, dignity, and proving that where you are born does not decide where you finish. But now let's talk about a champion who used his platform to say what others were too afraid to say. Number 7, Tyron Woodley. Ferguson, Missouri, a city the world would come to know for painful reasons. But Woodley was already fighting long before Ferguson became a headline. Two-time All-American wrestler at the University of Missouri, turned professional in 2009. And on July 30th, 2016, he knocked out Robbie Lawler in the first round and became the UFC welterweight champion. 4 consecutive defenses followed. Stephen Thompson twice, Demian Maia, Darren Till. His wrestling was elite. His one-punch power was real from the very first second of every fight. But here is what separates him from just being another former champion. While holding that belt, Woodley publicly called out the U. He said black fighters were not being promoted, paid, or respected equally. He said it while still champion, knowing it would cost him, knowing it would create friction. He did not wait until retirement to find his courage. By 2019, the belt moved on. But everything he said, history proved correct. That kind of courage does not appear on a record sheet. But it is a legacy, and no title change takes it away. Now imagine a fighter who changed not just a division, but the entire global culture of this sport. That man is at number 6, Israel Adesanya. Lagos, Nigeria. Raised in Auckland, New Zealand. Before the UFC, already a kickboxer with 75 wins and just 5 losses. Turned professional in MMA in 2012. By 2019, walked through the entire middleweight division and took the title. Fluid movement. Impossible timing. Head movement that makes punches miss by millimeters. 16 knockouts and 24 professional wins prove that the style is not just beautiful, it is deadly. 2-time UFC middleweight champion. Lost the belt to Alex Pereira in 2022. Came back and reclaimed it in 2023. But the record is only half the story. His anime-inspired entrances, his celebrations, his willingness to be completely himself inside the biggest arenas in combat sports, it connected with fans in Africa, the Pacific Islands, and Southeast Asia in ways no UFC champion had ever managed before. He did not just expand his own fan base, he expanded the entire sport's global reach. Now the next man carried not just a country, but an entire continent on his back. 5 consecutive title defenses to prove he could hold that weight. Number 5, Kamaru Usman. Born in Ochi, Nigeria, moved to America at age 8. 3-time INSAA All-American wrestler. Won the Ultimate Fighter Season 21. And in 2019, he defeated the man at number 7 on this list to become UFC welterweight champion. 5 consecutive defenses. Colby Covington twice. Jorge Masvidal twice. Gilbert Burns. Usman broke them all down, wrestling nobody could stop. Striking that got sharper every camp. Cardio that refused to quit, no matter how late the fight. He has won 20 of his last 23 fights. Knockouts and submissions, both permanently silencing anyone who called him just a wrestler. In 2022, Leon Edwards landed a head kick in the final seconds and knocked him out cold. The first knockout loss of his entire career. But 5 consecutive defenses. Representing Nigeria, representing Africa, never once letting that flag fall. His legacy is not just about titles, it is about representation. And that lives far beyond any belt. Now what if a fighter conquered not 1 division, but 2? What if he held 2 belts at the exact same time and still walked away as one of the most loved figures this sport has ever seen? Coming in at number 4, Daniel Cormier. Grew up in Louisiana. Competed in the Athens 2004 and Beijing 2008 Olympics as a wrestler. Turned professional in MMA in 2009. By 2015, a UFC light heavyweight champion. By 2018, knocked out Stipe Miocic at UFC 226 and became UFC heavyweight champion simultaneously. The only second fighter in history to hold 2 divisional titles at the combined championship reign 1,139 days across both divisions. His only losses came against the number 1 on this list and against Stipe Miocic, the 2 most dominant fighters at their weight classes in the sport's history. Losing to the very best defines the level Cormier chose to compete at every single night. He retired in 2020. Fans loved him on the way out just as much as on the way in. No bitterness, no ugly ending, just a double champion who fought with heart and left with his dignity completely intact. Now what if a fighter dominated so completely that the sport's biggest promoters still refused to give him the spotlight he deserved while it was happening? And history had to correct that injustice years. At number 3, Demetrius Johnson. 5 feet 3 inches tall. The smallest man on this entire list. and the most technically skilled MMA fighter in the history of this sport. Turned professional in 2007. By 2012, the inaugural UFC flyweight champion. Between 2012 and 2018, there were 11 consecutive flyweight title defenses, a UFC record that still stands today. 27 finishes in 31 professional bouts, 54% striking accuracy, defensive brilliance that no flyweight has matched since. He did not dominate with power. He dominated with precision. Wrestling that set up striking. Striking that set up grappling, and a submission game so sharp it produced the flying armbar finish against Rayborg, a sequence coaches still replay in slow motion for students today. The UFC did not promote him like it did its bigger stars. Ars. Casual fans did not know his name. He was the best fighter alive for years, invisible to most of the audience watching. But the sport does not forget. Coaches know, fighters know, analysts know, and now history knows. Mighty Mouse was the most complete fighter on earth during his reign. That truth was always going to come out. Now what if one man held a championship for 2,457 straight days and changed how the entire world understood striking? Number 2, Anderson Silva, turned professional in 1997. By 2006, UFC middleweight champion, 2,457 consecutive days as champion. The longest title reign in UFC history, 11 consecutive defenses. But numbers alone cannot describe what happened inside that octagon. He fought with his hands at his sides. He let punches come within an inch of his face and moved just enough to make them miss. He threw front kicks that knocked out former champ. He submitted Chael Sonnen after being dominated for 4.5 rounds, one of the greatest comebacks this sport has ever seen. He did not just win fights, he created art. Israel Adesanya built his entire career studying how this man moved. Jon Jones named him on his personal GOAT list. The most dominant fighters of the next generation all started by watching Anderson Silva and learned what striking could truly become when treated as a craft. The record will eventually be broken. The influence never will. And now, the man who started this video. The man from Rochester, New York. The name on every single GOAT list. Number 1, Jon Jones. 23 years old. UFC light heavyweight champion, the youngest title holder in the division's history. And then he simply did not stop. 16 title fight victories, the most in UFC history. 1,743 consecutive days as champion. A 95% takedown defense rate no fighter has ever matched. 28 wins and 1 loss. Shogun Rua, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, Alexander Gustafsson twice, Daniel Cormier twice, Stipe Miocic, Cyril Gane. The best competition across 2 weight classes over 15 years. And in 2023, he moved to heavyweight and knocked out Cyril Gane in the first round to become heavyweight champion. The second man in history to hold 2 divisional titles simultaneously. Elite wrestlers could not take him down. Elite strikers could not land clean. Elite grapplers could not submit him. He had everything, and he used everything, every single night. His career has complicated chapters outside the octagon. Suspensions, controversies. He made decisions that disappointed his fans more than once. But inside the cage, the numbers are not a debate. They are a verdict. Jon Jones is the greatest MMA fighter of all time and the greatest black MMA fighter of all time. Not 2 separate sentences, the same sentence. Because the GOAT of this sport by every standard it has ever used is a black man from Rochester, New York who never truly stopped winning. 10 men, 10 roads, 1 truth. Kevin Holland has 5 finishes in 1 year. Jamahal Hill is carrying the next generation's torch. Francis Ngannou is crossing a desert to become the heavyweight champion. Tyron Woodley demanded respect when others stayed silent. Israel Adesanya is expanding MMA's entire global audience. Kamaru Usman's 5 defenses for Africa. Daniel Cormier's double champion dignity. Demetrius Johnson's 11 defenses and 0 recognition. Jon Jones' 16 victories, 2 divisions, 1 legacy that stands alone. Black fighters did not just succeed in MMA, they defined what greatness means inside an octagon. That is not a take. That is history. Who is your number 1? Drop it in the comments right now. Every single comment gets read. Hit the like button if this breakdown showed you something no other channel connected. Subscribe and turn on notifications.